But in that story, and as we lead up in the Doc Ellis, we'll talk about something else real quick. And I want to take you in the mind of a gentleman who I refer to as Pop-in-Law because that's what he is. My pops-in-law, his very first, the reason that he found baseball boring was the very first baseball game he was taken to. He said, yeah, they stopped in the middle of the game so this guy can give some speech about being lucky. And he
No.
said that just nonchalantly. And I'm like,
No. Was this
so,
July 4th, 1939?
so I go on YouTube, I find, the Lou Gehrig speech. Say, yeah, that's it. I guess it was some kind of big deal. It just took too long. I'm like, wow. Okay. All right. All right. Then. So as he sort of unraveled his story with sports, I got a better idea into the insight of what it meant for somebody who was living in the middle of this time. His father was a radio repairman, eventually became a television repairman, as did he. And his father worked in Manhattan. They lived in Manhattan, not that far away from Yankee Stadium. His father would bring home baseballs all the time. Some we would have autographs. So, but Pop said he didn't care for the balls because they didn't bounce. So they had a drawer full of baseballs. Some of them even autographed. And I remember finding a picture of a Babe Ruth autographed ball. He said, "Yeah, I remember that signature. That's probably one of the balls I might have had." And oh no, don't go crazy. Yeah, it's gonna get worse in a minute. So
For those listening to the audio feed, my eyes were as wide as saucers. Like, you could have served dinner on my eyeballs right there.
And so his view of sports through this lens of growing up in Manhattan, I'm going to say it this way, an awkwardly segregated Manhattan, watching everything from Negro League teams, Homestead Grays and the like, watching the New York Yankees of that day and the like. He was born in 1928. But his cultural history only recognized football, as we call soccer here in America, which is what led him to hockey. So I'm going to bring you through this story of his view of why he doesn't care for sports and why he's walked away from sports so many times. So even though he grew up in that time, and so now you get an idea of what the 11-year-old Pop-in-Law was sort of dealing with.
And on top of that, in that time period in New York, not only did you have the Yankees in the Bronx, you had right across the river, probably right near where your pops-in-law grew up, was the Polo Grounds. And then,
there you go.
Just a stone's throw from where I grew up and where you lived was Ebbets Field. And
so, oh, by the way, for those of you who don't know, we did not even discuss this. we again, you just look, okay, we're taping a show. You lay it out for me. We'll deal with it. I gave Matt no heads up because that's exactly where I was going with this, with those two teams, the Brooklyn Dodgers and the New York Giants. Because here is Pop's memory of those teams. He wasn't a Yankee fan because everybody was a Yankee fan that was growing up, and they talked about those guys. And that memory of going to that Yankee game spurned him against the Yankees because their games are too long because this guy always talked. Because in his mind, that happened every game.
Greatest first baseman of all time.
Yep, but that happens every game. So since the Yankees do that in every game, I'm not going to a Yankees game. The Yankees suck. So if you want to hate the Yankees, I guess that's one reason I hate the Yankees. So here's a guy who grew up Brooklyn Dodgers, New York Giants all the way. New York Giants big time. And then, of course, rooting for the Dodgers as they were trying to come up and beat the Yankees. The Brooklyn Dodgers come up. They finally beat the Yankees. These history things you guys can look up. But so what happened? They win the World Series. The Brooklyn Dodgers win the World Series. Okay, now the fact that Jackie Robinson played for the Brooklyn Dodgers, no big deal for Pop. It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. I saw the Negro League guys play. It was always somebody on the field who was of color. So what they did, who cares? So for him, it wasn't that big of a social deal, right? But what was the deal was when the Brooklyn Dodgers, because he remembered the posters of "How About Them Bums." He remembered that poster of this half-toothless guy saying, "How about them bums," talking about the Brooklyn Dodgers. What happens after they win the World Series, Matt? They move. They moved to LA. Not only did they move to LA, and you called it exactly right, not too far from where he also grew up, the Polo Grounds, and the New York baseball Giants moved to San Francisco. So in Pop's mind, those two franchises sort of anchored his childhood in American sports, and he watched them, after attaining this level of success, leave, right? Go away.
Yeah.
To the other side of the country, which for him was the other side of the world in his mind. So, okay, so now he's soured on baseball. So what leads him to hockey in this odd way was hockey, and how it's played in the way he views it is really close to the way football is played, soccer is played, to what he grew up with. In terms of how, positioning and plays on the field. He understands the position. He understands that stuff, even though he doesn't know how to skate. That has nothing to do with it. He's looking at the game for what the game is. So he recognizes that. So he says, oh, that's pretty close to football. And in his word, there was no good football in the United States until they had the professional league later, which didn't last that long, which is going to tie into what we're going to talk about. So here's a guy who found some sort of place in hockey, going to the Garden, watching the Rangers, watching all the original 6 teams, and watch that league grow. But more importantly, as he became an adult, even more so than an adult, a working adult, kids of his own, gets his first big job, he moves to Connecticut. More specifically, he moves to Hartford, Connecticut. So now his oldest daughter is getting ready to head off to go to school. The other kids are kind of dealing with high school or whatever. So he's at a developmental point in their lives, post Korean War, post Vietnam War. Here he is in Connecticut, and he goes to watch the Hartford Whalers play.
And this is during the WHA, the Rebel League days. And if you're a fan of sports books, I really can't tout this book enough as one of the best breakdowns of a league to date. David Harris's The League is up there. There's a great book about the ABA that also breaks down the league to a molecular level. It's on par with the book of basketball for me in terms of a great book about the history of not only a sport, but pretty much the entire culture surrounding the sport at the time.
Right. So he had heard about this team. At the same time, he's watching his team grow. He watches his team play. His second daughter gets a gig working in Atlanta. So he now getting ready to work for the airlines. He's back and forth between New York and Atlanta. Atlanta has a hockey team, has the Atlanta Flames. So now, he's in heaven. He's good to go. He's got hockey when he comes to Atlanta. He's got hockey when he goes back to Connecticut, right? So then the Miracle on Ice happens, 1980. Now, guess what? One of the guys from the Miracle on Ice team is playing for the Atlanta Flames. And then what happens? Typical Atlanta fashion, the team gets sold that year and moved. So again, another team that he was learning to love and had and was connected to was now gone. So then what happens not too long after that? Well, I say not too long. When I say not too long, I mean 17 years after that, because of where his mind is starting to go. The Hartford Whalers, that hockey team, as he called them, they then left, which means a lot of his buddies who had started working for the arena and things like that were now out of jobs. So now, okay, yes, I know we're into 1997 at this particular point, but you're looking at a guy who his connection through sports, and every team he's connected with, the association is they now leave.
Yeah.
Then Atlanta gets the Thrashers. The Thrashers come in, hot flaming egg on a bucket, then they're gone. So now Pop is relatively done, but that wasn't the thing that killed him on it altogether. He was one of the people in my life that I can say unequivocally have yet to watch another baseball game since the strike of 94.
Really? Is he mad that the Expos didn't win the chip that year? Because I can understand that being a point of consternation.
His thought process, like all those teams, now keep in mind his lens that we're talking about, right? Mm-hmm. The teams and the sports that he learned to like and learned to appreciate, going back to the Dodgers and the Giants, leave or they quit. So his mentality is, well, why should I invest? So his life, his adult life from age 25 on became a story of, I like this team. Wow, they're gone. I like this team. I say, they're gone. I like this. Why are they not playing? The reason he never cared for football because, one, he shared an experience of when he tried to learn how to play football, he got beat up really bad on the field because he had a horrible coach, basically. So football never attracted him at all. So his sports were hockey and baseball. Now, and the fact that they've been out of his life more than they've been in his life still causes him angst. He still laments those moments as if they just happened.